Trump's tariff policies are putting extreme pressure on the auto industry. What does that mean for America's budding EV sector? Trump has applied a 25% tariff on all imported automobiles and a 25% tariff on certain imported auto parts. This includes things like the engine, transmission, powertrain, and of course, electrical components. Now, under the UMCA, the United States Mexico Canada Trade Agreement, auto manufacturers are currently exempt from any tariffs being applied on auto parts until May 3rd. So that 25% tariff on auto parts will most likely or potentially be applied starting May 3rd. So here's some reactions from automakers currently. Stellantis has officially laid off 1,000 U.S. workers at their Michigan and Indiana plants and shuttered two of their production lines in Canada and Mexico in reaction to these auto tariffs being applied. This decision, as they've stated, is directly linked to the imposed tariffs by President Donald Trump on the imported vehicles and soon to be imported and tariffed auto parts. Stellantis has reported that they are laying off their workers at 5 plants. So this includes their Michigan and Indiana facilities, including their Warren, Sterling Heights, Kokomo Transmission, Indiana Transmission, and Kokomo Casting facilities. These facilities do produce their key components, such as stamping, transmission, and metal castings for their Dodge Durango, Jeep Gladiator, Cherokee, Wagoneer, and Ram trucks. Specifically for Canada and Mexico, these plant enclosures include their Windsor Assembly Plant, which is currently idling for the next 2 weeks, starting April 7th, and their Toluca Assembly Plant in Mexico, which is actually pausing in their entire operation for the whole month of April. So definitely extreme reaction we're seeing from Stellantis based off of these applied tariffs. And they also did cite, of course, the lacking demand for vehicles produced outside of the U.S. So clearly there is a great push in the international markets regarding China fulfilling a lot of those demands for their really great electric vehicles. So again, of course, tariffs are going to disrupt the auto sector's highly integrated supply chain. So it is, of course, making it pretty challenging right now for automakers. I definitely wouldn't want to be in the position of somebody working supply chain, especially coming after COVID, now having to get right thrown into having to deal with tariffs. Not that fun. Industry analysts do forecast a reduction in North America car production by at least 10 to 20% this year, and potentially up to 30% if tariffs continue to expand and include those critical auto parts. Volkswagen. So Volkswagen currently maintains they have about 37,000 vehicles in U.S. inventory, which should cover them for at least the next 2 months, providing a bit of a buffer now with the long term, giving them a little bit of a buffer so they can properly plan for a long-term tariff strategy. Now, of course, if these tariffs are short-term, then clearly nothing is going to change, of course. But Volkswagen has announced a couple of key changes now that these tariffs have been applied. So all rail shipments currently from Mexico have been halted. So Volkswagen announced that they're suspending their rail transport between their Mexican and U.S. plants. So that will affect their models like the Jetta, Teos, and the Tiguan, which are all currently built in Mexico. They've also announced that they are currently holding all of their European imports into the United States at their ports. So again, essentially it seems like they're going to try to see and wait out to see if these tariffs are more of a short-term thing. If they are, then they're going to continue to import. But of course, if those tariffs aren't a short-term thing, clearly you can imagine in the next 2 months, all of these European vehicles being imported are going to get hit by these tariffs. Likewise, Audi, the brand within Volkswagen, also announced that they're also holding vehicles arriving after April 2nd at U.S. ports. That's going to include their Q5, which is built in Mexico, and their models currently imported in from Europe. BMW. So BMW currently hasn't announced any production halts, But they did announce that they are going to absorb those tariffs coming from Mexico-made models, which includes their 3 Series, their 2 Series, and their M2, only until May 1st. So clearly, they're already starting to put the groundwork that after May, if these tariffs are still being applied, price increases are to be expected and passed down to the customer. Nissan and Infiniti. So Nissan, which of course has been struggling these last couple of years, has announced that they're planning, they did announce that they're going to terminate a shift at their Tennessee plant, but they actually have reversed that decision now due to the tariffs. So they're actually going to continue to produce those Rogue crossover models to try to get into some of the market by offering these lower cost Rogue models with these tariffs kind of causing a mix in pricing increases. So clearly, we all know Nissan has been struggling with their current line of offering, especially as a business. They've been looking at potentially merging with another manufacturer. So with them now continuing to produce the Rogue crossover models in the Tennessee plant, they are also going to slash prices on their Rogue and their Pathfinder models to offset the expected tariff-driven demand declines. Additionally, Infiniti, which is of course is a brand with Nissan, has announced their QX50 and their QX55 crossovers, which are currently built in Mexico for the US market, have their production lines paused indefinitely, citing tariff impacts and they're needing to reassess supply chains. Jaguar. So of course, everyone, Jaguar has been in the news here the last little bit, but Jaguar Land Rover said that they're going to pause shipments of their British-made cars to the US while they weigh long-term plans. Now, of course, Jaguar has announced that they're not selling any more vehicles this year and I believe into 2026 as they transition to a full electric vehicle product line. But of course, they do still sell a ton of Land Rovers, so I can imagine this mainly affects Land Rover, and they're going to be pausing those shipments for now. Now, some people are actually doing pretty well currently with all of these tariff uncertainties going on, specifically Hyundai and Toyota. So Hyundai reported record-breaking March 2025 and Q1 sales. So clearly, this tariff-driven demand and announcement have actually lined up really well for them since they have already onshored quite a lot of manufacturing for the US market and to Georgia. So for them, they might not necessarily be as affected as other manufacturers, but of course, as I mentioned, these tariffs will eventually include auto parts, and auto parts do make up for a large percentage of most of the US-made cars currently. Likewise, Toyota also saw a pretty big sales bump at the end of March just from increased customer traffic at dealerships. So with both Hyundai and Toyota, they currently don't have plans to release any pricing increases immediately, but Hyundai has mentioned that there may be pricing increases after the next 2 months. So of course, clearly there's a lot of news going around and a lot of auto manufacturers are trying to figure out a path forward with all of these tariffs currently. The whole industry as a whole is still holding their breath regarding what's going to happen with those car part tariffs. Now, clearly, right now, there's a lot going on in this market. I'm sure that the electric vehicle sector is, of course, going to be hit pretty hard due to these news. A lot of the parts and components that currently come from electric vehicles, especially those electronic components like control modules, batteries, things like that, are probably mostly supplied from overseas markets, especially the battery packs. The United States has been trying to develop a battery industry, but that's kind of been slowing down these days. So really, electric vehicle prices in the next couple of months to the next, couple of years, I strongly suspect will continue to rise if these tariffs are still applied. So I'd expect electric vehicle manufacturers or any manufacturer looking to bring electric vehicle lines are probably looking at these tariffs pretty hard and wondering if they should just kind of put some of these plans for the United States on hold for now with all of these uncertainties going on. That's the current update right now. I'll definitely provide another update in the next couple of weeks as more news comes from automakers regarding how they are reacting to these tariff announcements and changes.